Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you today, and this is the Schaftlein Report, Thursday's edition, and we are broadcasting from rainy and chilly Southern California. We just can't break this stuff, folks. It's amazing. And my good buddy from Long Island, New York, opening day, Jeffrey, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, and happy holiday, everybody.
Well, we'll see how that one plays itself out as the season
But
starts.
Mark, as of now, with a 0-0 record, the Mets are tied for first.
It used to be an embarrassment to be a Met fan, but not anymore. They're going to be really good this year. Listen, breaking news today on the international stage, Jeffrey, the Russians are escalating this conflict. I mean, they pulled one of these sham arrests, arresting a Wall Street Journal reporter, charging him with spying. You know, his case is going to go to court in May. Jeffrey, I know tensions are high between the West and Russia, but this is straight out of the old Soviet playbook. You know, the Russians are stalled in their advance, and according to General Milley, their troops are getting slaughtered, a la running into machine gun fire. There's reports of what they call blocking squads, troops that actually point their guns at Russian soldiers and not allow them to retreat. I mean, Jeffrey, this is turning into a slaughterhouse showing no signs of ending.
And Putin's not going to let it end until he wins. You know, he's very determined.
Well, there's no question about that.
And he doesn't want to agree to, Ukraine's needs. They want the Crimea back. They want all of Western Ukraine that Russia tried to take back. And Russia's not going to do it.
Yeah, you meant Eastern Ukraine. Yeah, no, they're not going to do it. I mean, the United States and NATO are supplying Ukraine with weapons. Now, some of those Western weapon systems are fairly sophisticated, and they haven't actually been deployed yet. But they are supplying them with ammunition, tanks, other weapons of war. And the Russians are basically...
Plus loudspeakers with the Barney song. They play those to the Russians. The Russians run home.
Well, the Russians, Jeffrey, are ramping up their economy to be a military economy. I mean, Putin has basically escalated this to a point. It's no longer a special military operation. It's no longer a war against Ukraine. He's labeling this as an essential threat for Russia's survival that he personally created. And
aren't we saying it's East versus West? That it's the whole world against Russia?
Well, it's not the whole world against Russia, though. That's the point. I mean, you like the people in this country to lead to believe that, but it's simply not true. I mean, China is buying oil from Russia. Iran has agreements with Russia. There's other countries too. So is Russia isolated? To a degree. Have the sanctions worked? To a degree. Could there be more? Yes. But, Russia is somewhat isolated. Yeah, Putin's been charged with a war crime, and in certain countries he would get arrested. But the fact is, the Russians, despite the incredible losses, Putin seems to care not one bit about his troops. And, they're doing, the idea of they used this tactic, Jeffrey, in World War II, where Russians would advance on the Germans, and if there was anyone who tried to retreat, they'd get shot. So they call them blocking squads. And that's, we've seen reports of that. So I don't know. I'm with you in the fact that, this is another escalation, and this is going to get worse before it gets better. Ukraine's position is, they're fighting for this salt mining town of Bakhmut that no one had ever heard of before the war started, and now it's like something the U.S. military says is not strategically important, but Zelensky, who's the president of Ukraine, says, no, it's very important psychologically. So, to me, this thing looks like it's going to go on a while. And Jeffrey, the Kremlin spokesperson, the Putin spokesperson, the propagandist in chief, has warned business elites and oligarchs that this war is going to go on for a while.
Well, any spokesman you're going to get something like that. Do you remember the guy from Iran who, like, when American troops were Iraq, American troops were entering the capital. No, 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 no. We're going to win. We're going to win. Don't worry.
Baghdad Bob.
Baghdad Bob.
That's what they called it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's different here because Putin's spokesperson, again, this is not the Iraqi army. It's the Russians, and whether you talk about their battle losses or not, they have a bigger army, they have more weapons than Ukraine, but they're fighting on Ukraine's turf. And this just, when you're on the other party's turf, the other party has more incentive than you do. And frankly, morale in the Russian military is pretty low right now, according to U.S. military analysts. So I don't know. I mean, I think this thing is going to go on, and I don't see any common ground there for, quote, a negotiated settlement. I mean, they're never going to get back Crimea. So if you make that part of your demand, I don't see where you go from there.
Well, you have something to negotiate then.
Well, true.
Give us back everything, keep Crimea.
Well, it's easy for you and I to say, but boy, I got to tell you, the Russians went into this thing thinking it was going to be a cakewalk, and it's turned out to be anything but. I mean, anyhow, again, a top U.S. general yesterday in testimony before the House of Representatives confirmed that Russians are being slaughtered on the front lines. And,
I would love to hear it from a different source, because Milley is a liar. I'm just saying it. I mean, from experience, when he talked about Afghanistan, he lied.
Yeah,
when he talked about Trump, he lied.
Yep.
I would like to hear it from another source.
Yeah, the only other sources that I've heard are the Ukrainian soldiers themselves that are basically stating the same thing. And the people who are manning those machine guns, if you will, a World War I tactic, are saying, when the Russians come at us, in waves, it's easy to kill them because, we got a machine gun and they're running with only a weapon. But anyhow, it's an awful situation. And
really is.
Yeah, it really is. All right, shifting out of Russia and Ukraine for just a minute, because it has been in the headlines. Did you see that story where Merrick Garland, again, the Attorney General of the United States, basically said, don't arrest the abortion protesters who are going to the Supreme Court People's House? You and I talked about that, saying, why would you, when it was assault on Capitol Hill, arrest them? But when it's liberal protesters protesting it in front of justices' houses, Garland comes out and says no. What do you make of that?
Well, let's first start with who Garland was working for.
Well, okay.
Who gave the order? And Garland follows Biden's orders. Now, to put it, I don't believe. I mean, I believe because I've read it, but I just can't believe that a justice, the head of the Justice Department would say, yeah, go protest right outside the house of a Supreme Court justice, and bring your guns too, because you might need them.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It's horrible.
It is. I will take a little exception with you. Biden giving the order. I don't think Biden's competent enough to give an order like that. I think Garland is just basically, he knows what, quote, the company policy is. It doesn't even have to come from Biden, and he'll claim it's independent because the Justice Department's supposed to operate independently, but you and I know they don't. But again, I was just sort of shocked to see that because, you can have political disagreements. Okay, you want to protest in front of the Supreme Court? Fine, have at it, but not in front of people's houses. That's right. That's going way over the line. And
I think it's a reason to be thankful for Mitch McConnell because he made sure that Garland would not be on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I won't get into too much, but every time I hear people criticize McConnell, I think, man, do they really understand what this man did for the country and the party? I mean, keeping a leftist like Garland off the court, and we ended up, you know how we ended up. I mean, we're 6-3 in the majority on that court, conservative, but that would not have happened had Trump not elected president. So yeah, McConnell did great when he was under pressure. But it is sort of troubling. We see all these stories about deep state involvement, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist type guy, and I know you're not either, but man, when you hear stories like that, it just bugs you because that shouldn't be the case. Just an opinion.
And you see the stories leaking out about January 6th and things like that. It just sounds like America. It's turning into what America isn't.
Right. Yeah, I concur with you on that. Look, next story is a horrific one. We lost 2 Black Hawk helicopters, 9 members of our military killed in a training accident with Black Hawk helicopters in Kentucky last night. Boy, that just tugs at the heart. I mean, we've had a lot of tragedy in this country this week. The Nashville shooting, the accident, with losing 9 service members. It's tough. I mean, we're having some pretty, it's not been the best of weeks for, reporting these stories, but, we got to talk about them, Jeffrey.
I just hope most of America realizes what happened, and it should damage their heart a little, because these guys, these kids are training to save our butts. And you should be appreciative of them and helping their families mourn.
Right.
Because, like I said, these guys are saving our butts.
Yeah, no, there's no question. Now, they haven't all been identified yet because they have to notify first of kin. But, when I saw the story, I was just like, oh, my goodness, this is...
Absolutely.
You hate
kind of what I thought when I saw it, too.
Yeah, and then, to add, another train derailment, this time in Minnesota. I think this one was carrying some type of methane. I mean, I don't know, Jeffrey. I'm not an expert on rail traffic, but damn, 2 of these derailments in 2 months. I mean, we would go years without seeing something problematic like this.
Well, it is Minnesota. Good thing too bad it didn't light on fire, because that would melt some of the snow. But yeah, I mean, look, I had to take a train every day for 30 years, but it wasn't a long train. It was just from Long Island to the city. But trains don't feel safe when you're in them a lot.
Especially, well, what about subway? Not much better on a subway, is it?
Subway is better, believe it or not, because you're standing,
Okay.
But I remember being on the train once where they had to cut back a car, and it was 90 degrees, and everybody had to stand. All of a sudden, they had to stop because they announced that somebody had a heart attack. And I scream out, "Where's he sitting?" Wow. But, you're treated like an animal on the Long Island Railroad. And they push trains as the number one way we should be traveling because it's green. I don't want to turn blue. I'm not joking, though. I mean, trains are not as safe as anybody they say.
Well, that's a whole nother topic. We've talked about that before, and that's not unique to New York, but is sort of a New York type situation. And it's bad. There's no doubt about it. Hey, listen, on economic news, let's shift out, try to get some more positive stuff. Look, Jobless claims, Jeffrey, came in 198,000, up 7,000, but that's still a low number. I mean, we're going to get the inflation figures tomorrow. Wall Street has rallied over the past couple weeks since the banking crisis. The VIX has come down below 20. It was above 30 when the banking crisis hit. Prices have really stabilized. I mean, the prices of stocks now as a market capitalization are about where they were before the Silicon Valley Bank incident.
Yep. But I think tomorrow's going to be interesting. I mean, the jobless claims, that's less than 3% up, but so it's not really a lot. But I am worrying about tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And if you saw the gross national product was evaluated for fourth quarter, and it went down 0.7. So, and they're predicting that it'll be around 2% for the next year. That's like back to Obama territory.
Well, that would be optimistic. I'm hearing, on an annual basis, the figures that the Fed is saying are about 0.5% growth for this year. Now,
Yikes.
That's not a recession, but boy, it's pretty close to it. So, you know, I mean, yeah, this is going to be a key number tomorrow. And I want to ask you this. Let me ask you this, Jeffrey. You know, we've talked a little bit about the Biden administration's policy towards oil and drilling and all that type of thing. But, you know, they recently approved 3 of the 5 leases in Alaska. Now, you know, Biden is extending drilling in the Gulf of Mexico like 2,600 square miles. That's like the size of Italy. What do you make of this?
Not
I
the
mean,
leases.
what do you make of this? I mean, those leases are worth about $400 million to the government. I mean,
Yeah, but it's not really just the leases. It's the permission to drill.
right.
And once you get the lease, it doesn't mean anything until you get to evaluate and let you drill.
Well, of
And
course.
that's what people don't listen when Biden says, "Oh yeah, we have 9,000 leases." That, well, if they're not allowed to drill, you know, the lease is as good as my hair.
But in this case, in Alaska, they can and will drill, and that's going to be producing a lot of oil that the country needs. And signing these leases in the Gulf of Mexico, again, an oil richer, there's going to be oil drilling there too. So, I mean, it's harder to drill in the Gulf than it is obviously on land. Oil's in some pretty precarious places around the globe. But look, I bring this point up because we've been very critical of the administration at times, but on these 2 issues, it almost seems like he's trying to move to the center. Is there any truth to that, or am I missing something?
Exactly. I think you should look at it again the second week in November.
Yeah, of course. They have reverse policy on everything.
Because that's really what he's doing. He's trying to look better, you know. And I think it was 88% of Democrats don't want him to run again.
But not that high. It was like 58%. 58.
Well, that's still.
It's a big number. Speaking of politics, I mean, it's a perfect segue into it, Jeffrey. Biden's approval rating, depending upon what polling service you're looking at, he's anywhere 38 to 42%, and his disapproval is like 54 to 56. Those are way underwater numbers, and they're not getting better.
Yeah, but you know what? In California, that's good because they have the drought. But so they like that when he's underwater. It's
Drought? What are you talking about? Drought? We
oh
had
well.
more
Yeah, the last couple of weeks, it's too much rain.
couple weeks for the past 3 months. This place has
Really?
had a ton. They're filling up reservoirs out here. It's
And let me ask you something though, because I don't live in California. For years, I've heard that the drought that California was having,
Yeah.
the cause was climate change. Are they saying now the rain is the cause is climate change?
they're not going there, to be honest with you. But it is interesting you bring that up because there were parts of California what they call extreme drought and exceptional drought, and it was real. I mean, there were lake beds that were drying up. Now, this year, and again, you haven't even had all the snow melt off yet. You have more water in this state now than you've had, you know, in decades. I mean, it's literally the place is swimming in water. Reservoirs that were dry a year ago are completely full. Jeffrey, there is lots of rain and snow in California in the last.
Well, there's a
months.
reason I asked that because in New York, when we had one of those global freezes,
Yeah,
they blamed it on global warming.
everything's blamed on global warming. It's so political. It's insane. No, they're not. You know, they blame the drought on that. I don't know what they're blaming this on. I mean, because this has actually been a good thing for the state. You know, the people may not like it, but environmentally, economically, it's been good for the state for sure. So, but I know I get the point of your question. Hey, you know, they blamed it on global warming when it was dry. Now it's wet. What do they blame it on? Global cooling? I don't know.
Now they blame everything on Trump anyway.
They do. Let's get back to politics because, you know, Biden is going in the wrong direction. But it's interesting. On the Republican side, you know, Trump is now up like 30 on DeSantis and the rest are in low single digits. I get it. You know, right now it's only Trump and Haley officially announced. But DeSantis is teasing. Mike Pence was in Iowa. When polls
I guarantee you Pence is running.
Oh, of course he's going to run. There's no question about it. And you know what? He may be. Look, don't underestimate him, folks. I'm telling you, you know, a lot of Trumpites, they don't want any part of him. But Mike Pence has a long, successful political career. I mean, he's done well. And he's a conservative. You know where Mike Pence stands. There's no ambiguity on his positions. And I think he may surprise some people and do better than people think. Will he win the nomination? I'm not ready to go there yet.
You know what I'm hearing a lot from fellow conservatives? Tim Scott.
Yeah, from that yes. Again, he'll get in the race. And look, at the end of the day, Jeffrey, they're going to have an election in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, the first 3 states.
And those are all DeSantis states.
Well, I don't know that you could say they're anybody's states yet. I mean,
well, if you look at the polls now,
yeah.
I mean, it's early, but DeSantis is leading by a big margin, those 3 states.
Even in South Carolina, Tim Scott's home state? Really? That could change if Tim Scott gets in the race. But yeah, I get your point. I get it.
But on the other hand, I mean, those are the first 3, and after the first 3, people start,
well, you have Super Tuesday, of which Florida is going to be a big deal, and Trump's not going to win Florida. DeSantis will win his home state of Florida. My gut feeling tells me this far out, if Tim Scott gets in the race, Tim Scott, Nikki Haley, it's her home state too. So they could sort of split that vote. But, if Trump doesn't win Iowa or New Hampshire, and I'm not saying he will or he won't, I mean, DeSantis could win it. But that's why some of this national polling, we talk about it a little bit, but Jeffrey, you and I know, once the field takes shape, this polling numbers are going to change.
Well, that and what people don't remember is that it's not a national election. It's 50 state elections.
Mm-hmm. Particularly in the primaries.
Or as President Obama would say, 57 state elections.
57 states, yeah, right, exactly. But here's an interesting take from it too. When you run Biden against Trump, Trump's down by 2. Biden against DeSantis, DeSantis is up by 2. So plus or minus 2 points this early, it's a statistical tie in my view. So what I'm saying, plus or minus, Joe Biden's sitting at a 38 to 42% approval rating. Majority of Democrats, last poll I saw was 58%, maybe it's higher, do not want him to run. He's looking increasingly, I mean, when you hear aides, hey, tell him where he has to go to an event, what's his target, where to look, what to say. I mean, it's just sort of embarrassing, to be honest with you. And I think, he's going to announce he has no opposition, but man, does the country really want to go down this path? And sadly to say, maybe.
Well, the other candidates are not well known and haven't declared yet.
Well, true.
My prediction is if anybody but Trump gets the nomination, the Republicans win, maybe even win big.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
If Trump gets the nomination, well, we might have another 4 years.
Yeah, if it's Biden-Trump again, I don't think Trump can win because I don't think he can win in the key swing states that we need, like Michigan, Pennsylvania, maybe Wisconsin, maybe Arizona, maybe Georgia.
That's for sure.
Yeah, but again, and here's another thing, I want to talk about this too. There is going to be a third party in a lot of states. This no labels party is going to be on the ballot in many states. Now, the state of Arizona, Jeffrey, is trying to keep no labels off the ballot. Why? Because they're fearful that that's going to take away votes from Biden. And they're already nervous about Biden's low poll numbers. And they're nervous that if Biden goes down, the Senate may go down with him. So they not only could lose the White House, they could lose the Senate, and it could be back where Republicans control all 3 branches.
Well,
That's what they're fearful.
Though Trump isn't that they don't like his policies; it's that they don't like him.
They don't like him. Period.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, and the fact is, look, okay, Trump can win right now he's the prohibitive favorite to win the Republican nomination. Let's just call it what it is. But again, we said this in the last election. Democrats are roughly 30% of the vote. Republicans are roughly 30% of the vote. Independents make up 40%. I know, folks, those numbers are off slightly, but for this early ballpark, it's close enough. Okay. Biden wins 90% of the Democrats, Trump wins 90% of the Republicans. Those independents are going to decide it. And those particular 5 to 7, 8 swing states, independents are not voting more than 50% for Trump. He's down at like 30% among independents. So it's an uphill battle. And look, a lot can change. And but I don't want to.
A lot of the hatred is irrational.
Yeah, okay, well, that's true.
I'm no Trump fan, but the things I read and see, talk about the guy's policies. Don't talk about the fact, well, I think he raped 7 people.
They just can't get...
It's like that old saying when you're running for office, don't be caught in bed with a dead girl or a live boy. It just doesn't work, okay? If you want to have a really angry Twitter, read Rob Reiner's. Remember when he was big?
Yeah. Yeah, look, he's a liberal and he's against. I get that, but again, you're right. There's the policies. You look back, Trump policies, Biden policies. A lot of Trump policies were good. Now, Trump had the unfortunate situation of dealing with a pandemic. Goes with the job. Okay, there's some question how that was handled, but economically, we were in better shape. But again, Biden can make the argument better shape. He says, hell, under me, we got 3.5% unemployment. And oil's back down.
Unemployment under Trump before the pandemic.
It's back to where, yeah.
Right. But the other thing is the foreign policy.
Again, when voters vote, Jeffrey, in this country,
I know.
I get it, but that people talk about foreign policy. When it comes time to elections, you know where that is on the list of things that people care about the most? On of 10 items?
Food on the table.
Well, that's a biggie. That's a biggie. And it's very costly for food right now.
But I think that with the threat from China, I hear more about foreign policy and the fact that Biden is weak more than I've ever heard before. And even this, the kidnapping of the reporter. Everybody I've talked to said, well, Biden has a thing on his shirt that says, please, sir, hit me again. Yeah. Because he's such a weakling.
Yeah, again, we're going to see how things play itself out. I conceptually agree with what you're saying, but unfortunately, a big chunk of the public doesn't hit their radar screen. So, but again, we got a long ways to go. We still got to get nominations through. But it is interesting, though, this third party, this no labels, Democrats are very fearful of it because they believe it may take away enough independent voters to where the independents that like Trump or Republicans will vote Republican, and the no labels will peel off Democratic votes. We shall see. Let me.
You know what I keep thinking though?
What's that?
I thought the last presidential election was just ended, and all of a sudden I'm writing about presidential elections again.
It's going to get you a little crazy. We got a couple things to close it up with here. Hey. A story which I found interesting, the National Hockey League. Now, I'm no big hockey guy. I couldn't tell you much about it. But apparently the NHL was going to have Pride Night. Again, why? What? But they decided, we're going to have that. The players said, we're not wearing any of that LGBTQ gear. And you know what? I'm standing up like this for the players. Why do they continue to try to shove this garbage down people's throats?
You can have a Pride Night, but don't ask the players to wear shirts.
Right. You want to have it, but don't change. Exactly. You echoed my thoughts, 100%.
It's against people. For some people, it's against their faith.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you want to have it, but don't. Yeah. You said it perfectly. I totally agree with you. And then, another thing, breaking news a couple days ago, the Pope in the hospital, Jeffrey, upper respiratory infection. We hope he gets better, but he's in his mid 80s, and that's serious stuff. Anytime you're in your mid 80s and you have that type of infection.
Well, the other thing is that with a leader like the Pope, they don't give you the full story.
No.
So if he's worse than they're saying, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it could be. We wish him all the best, and
absolutely
millions that would be praying for him.
Especially with Passover next week.
Yeah.
But you know what? In Yiddish, the way they say Jewish holiday, they say it's Yontif. And I always wanted to meet the Pope during a Jewish holiday so I could say Good Yontif Pontiff. And I've never had that opportunity.
Never had the chance. Well, since you're going to be out next Thursday, and it's Batters Up Day today, I'll close it out. We've got about a minute left. I always ask you this: where do you see things going? Because in 2 weeks you'll be back and we'll be talking about it. How do you see things playing out over the next couple of weeks?
I think a big thing is the inflation report.
Yeah, I concur with you. I agree.
If it goes up a little, it's going to be a big story. If it stays flat, it's going to be a big. I guess even if it goes down, it's going to be a big story. Whatever happens.
Yep. Yeah. I
concur with you. People are looking at that.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna have a huge effect on which direction the Federal Reserve goes with both quote quantitative tightening and interest rate policy, because effectively when they had to do the bank situation 2 weeks ago, they effectively had quantitative easing. They weren't trying to do quantitative easing. So I concur with you on this. That's a big deal.
I think the first thing I thought of when Russia kidnapped the reporter, and I know it's not this, but the first thing I thought about was Daniel Pearl. I don't know if you remember.
He was the Wall Street. Of course I remember. Yeah, he was killed. He was killed by ISIS. Yeah.
They cut his head off on TV.
Yeah.
Only maybe because it's the Wall Street Journal. But it's just not right that we're letting them kidnap our people. Earlier last year, it was the WNBA player. You remember?
Yeah. Yeah, Brittany Griner, and then they've still got Paul Whelan over there. So, listen, we're out of time, but Jeffrey, thanks again for the commentary today. I would say good.
One more thing.
Yeah,
if
sure.
Biden really want to hurt China, he should go to the Jewish people and say, order Italian on Sunday instead of Chinese.
And the other thing you should do is quit criticizing internal Israeli policies. I'll close it with that.
Well,
there's issues over in Israel. And we didn't talk about it today. I talked about it on the show the other day. But Biden getting involved in internal Israeli politics, that's not good. And
well, it's been done before.
I know it has, but
but it's never been done by a Republican. Clinton did it, and Obama did it.
I know it's not right though. All right, look, we're out of time. Jeffrey, have a great Passover next Thursday. Thank you.
Yeah, I got to go buy my product. There's a because matzah kind of binds you, and I'm creating a product to sell called "Let My People Go," and it's a fiber, but to loosen everyone up. But anyway, besides the holiday, just everybody have a good week.
Yep. We look forward to that too. A lot of good things can happen. But again, happy Passover, and then I will see you in 2 weeks.
And happy Easter, because I won't be here until after Easter.
Thank you very much. All right, folks, we'll be back next week. As always, we'll cut through the propaganda, tell you like it is, and we'll have a commentary on where we are economically when those numbers are released. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Have a good weekend.